I went to a small town in the Pacific Northwest last week. My name is Derek and I'm a wildlife photographer. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I thought this place would shake my creative block. The forest looked beautiful. Tall pines surrounded the cabin I rented. I didn't expect to feel so alone. The first evening was eerily quiet. I set up my camera and tripod, trying to capture the essence of the wilderness. I was hopeful, but doubt crept in. I went to my room later and began sifting through the photos. That's when I heard it. Soft tapping on the window. I thought it was just branches brushing against the glass. It didn't bother me much. It wasn't windy. I dismissed it. Then everything grew still. Very still. It felt wrong. On the second night, the tapping started again. This time it was louder. My stomach twisted as I sat up in bed. It felt like someone was watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling. I took a deep breath and decided to check outside, clutching my flashlight. I stepped out into the cold night. The woods were dark. I scanned the trees, expecting to see something. I saw nothing except shadows. My heart raced, but I told myself it must be an animal. I had spent too much time alone. Maybe I was imagining things. The tapping continued over the next few days. It grew more erratic, like it was trying to get my attention. I noticed strange symbols carved into the nearby trees. They looked ancient and unnerving. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The townsfolk were acting odd too. They avoided my gaze and whispered as I walked past them. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I decided to hike deeper into the forest. Each step felt heavy. The trees loomed over me. I felt like they were watching me too. The hairs on my neck stood up. My heart pounded. I turned suddenly, searching for the source of my unease, but there was nothing, just silence. That evening I sat on the porch. The tapping started again, harder, more desperate. I felt a chill creeping over me. I looked up into the shadows. Then I heard a voice. "Why did you come here?" My breath caught in my throat. I turned around quickly, expecting to see someone behind me. No one was there. I couldn't sleep all night. I lay in bed, remembering the symbols and the whispers. My pulse quickened as I recalled how the townsfolk had looked at me. I wondered if I'd disturbed something in the woods. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't shake the fear that something was following me. The next morning I packed my things and drove away. The woods seemed to watch me leave, and I felt whatever was there didn't want me to go. I haven't stopped thinking about that place since. The tapping still echoes in my mind. I keep asking myself what I disturbed. What was it that lurked in the shadows? I couldn't shake the feeling of dread as I drove away from that cabin. The scenic views I'd once found breathtaking turned uninspiring. I realized that I had only scratched the surface of whatever was haunting that forest. Each mile away seemed like a sigh of relief, but each glance in the rearview mirror almost felt like a promise of some unfinished business. Soon I found myself in the nearest town, a place called Marrow Creek. It was quaint, filled with small shops and cafes. My plan was to grab a coffee and maybe ask the locals about the strange symbols and odd behavior I'd encountered. Maybe someone would have an answer for me. I parked and made my way to a small cafe with a wooden sign that read, "The Maple Leaf." The smell of coffee wafted through the air. As I stepped inside, the low chatter came to an abrupt stop. A few heads turned, and I felt a twinge of anxiety wash over me again. It was as if I had walked into a room full of secrets. I approached the counter, trying to act casual. The barista, a woman with tired eyes, hesitated before taking my order. "What brings you to Marrow Creek?" she asked, her voice steady, but her expression wary. "Just passing through," I replied. I was staying in a cabin nearby. I had some unusual experiences and wanted to know if anyone in town could explain it. I ventured to mention the tapping, but something made me hesitate. She paled slightly at my words. "You should just forget about it," she said sharply. "Forget about what?" I pressed, curiosity flaring. Her eyes darted to the old man sitting in the corner, who had been quietly observing us. He suddenly cleared his throat. "It's not just tapping. People hear things they can't explain. Best to leave nothing disturbed." His voice was gravelly and carried a weight that made my skin prickle. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning in despite the cold sweat forming on my brow. The woman shot the old man a warning glance before speaking. "There are stories, old stories about the forest. They say it's been there long before us, and it doesn't take too kindly to trespassers." I felt my heart race. "What stories?" She hesitated, her expression turning grim. "People have gone missing in those woods. You're not the first photographer to be drawn there. Just be careful. That place isn't what it seems." My stomach twisted as I processed her words. Every instinct told me to leave, but my curiosity pressed me to stay. "What happened to them?" I whispered. But before she could answer, the sound of the cafe door jingled. I turned to see a child standing at the entrance, wide-eyed and trembling, pointing outside. "There's something out there!" the boy shouted, his voice shaking. Everyone in the cafe froze. I followed the direction of his finger, and that's when I saw it. A shadow moved between the trees a few 100 feet away. It was dark and twisted. Whatever it was seemed to pulse with an energy that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I gripped the edge of the counter. That shadow felt familiar. It felt like the darkness that haunted my nights. I realized that whatever I thought I had escaped was still out there, watching, waiting. I was pulled back into the present as the old man spoke softly. "Once it sees you, it doesn't let go." My heart sank. It wasn't over. I stared out the window, my heart racing. The shadow lingered just at the edge of the trees, shapeless yet unmistakably there. It felt like a dark reminder of everything I had experienced in that cabin. The cafe grew silent, the tension thick enough to slice through. Is it moving?" I asked. My voice came out shaky. I was still watching the shadow, half hoping it would vanish. The boy shook his head. "No. But it sees us," he whispered, trembling even more. "Let's not frighten the child," the barista said, her tone edged with panic. "Just leave it alone." She shot a meaningful glance at the old man, whose face had grown pale. "Boy's right," he muttered, looking directly at me. "You've stirred something. It won't let you go that easily." "Stirred what?" I shot back, my frustration finally bubbling over. "What are you talking about?" Before he could respond, the barista turned her gaze to the door. I followed suit and noticed a figure standing just outside. It was a woman, her expression vacant, as if she were in a trance. She stepped forward, gliding along the edge of the cafe, gradually transitioning from shadow to light. "Are you okay?" I called out, instinctively wanting to help. But instead of answering, she raised a finger and pointed directly at me. I felt my breath hitch. Every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. "That's her," the little boy said, retreating behind his mother's leg. "She went missing." My blood ran cold. I could feel the shift in the room, the way everyone seemed to draw back, eyes wide and fearful. I blinked, hoping my mind was playing tricks. No way," I breathed. "That can't be—" The woman took a step closer, her face now illuminated and twisted in a way I couldn't comprehend. "You came back," she said, her voice echoing like a broken record. "Who are you?" I whispered, the air thickening with dread. "I'm just like you. Lost." The words seemed to curl around me like fog, numbing my senses. I ran to the door, but my legs felt heavy. "Get away from her!" I screamed, urgency propelling me forward. The barista shouted something behind me, but I didn't hear. Then everything went dark. One moment I was in the cafe, arms pumping as I tried to escape, and the next a blinding darkness enveloped me. I could feel the cold seep into my skin, and I stumbled backward. The cafe vanished, replaced by the vast, looming trees of the forest. The shadow, now clearer, pressed closer. It felt alive, wrapping around me like a predator toying with its prey. The only sound was the pounding of my heart in my ears. Suddenly, I was not alone. The woman appeared beside me, her eyes wide and dark, filled with both recognition and fear. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered. Before I could grasp the gravity of her warning, the shadow lunged. I barely had time to scream. Everything went silent. Light flickered back into existence, and I gasped. I was sprawled on the forest floor, the damp earth soaking into my clothes. The trees towered above me, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The woman stood a few feet away, her expression a blend of sorrow and urgency. "Get up," she urged, her voice sharp despite her vacant eyes. "You have to run." "Run where?" I shouted, still disoriented. The shadow loomed at the edge of the clearing, waiting. It felt as if it had a heartbeat, pulsing in time with my fear. "The cabin!" she cried, her voice cracking. "We don't have much time." The memories of the cabin flooded back, every creak, every whisper. Why did I ever come back? I jumped to my feet, heart racing again. "Why do you know about it?" "I've been there, I saw what you did," she said, taking a step toward me. "You opened a door, I was on the other side." I was about to ask her what she meant when the air grew heavy, and the shadow pressed closer. The ground trembled slightly under my feet. It was hungry. "Run!" she urged again, her hand reaching toward me as if trying to pull me back from the brink of panic. I nodded, though doubt thundered in my head. I turned and my feet pounded against the forest floor, branches slapping at my face, the underbrush snagging my legs. Every instinct was screaming for me to escape. As I sprinted, the darkness engulfed the trees around me, swallowing the light. The shadows wrapped around my legs, dragging me back. I stumbled, the ground giving way to the familiar tilt of the cabin's porch. I clawed my way forward, determined not to be pulled into the eternal night. I reached the door, gasping for breath, but it was locked, the rusty handle refusing to budge. I pounded on the wood, desperation taking over. "Let me in! Let me in!" Behind me the woman's voice echoed, a distant reminder of hope. "It won't let you stay!" I jerked around, and there it was. The shadow formed a shape, a grotesque manipulation of what felt like 1,000 faces. It was an amalgamation of fear and loss, every inch of darkness corrupting the air around me. "Please!" I shouted, fervently yanking at the door handle, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Let me in!" And then, to my shock, I felt a shift. The door swung open, revealing the dark interior of the cabin. I didn't think twice. I bolted inside, slamming it shut behind me. Inside, the familiar scents hit me instantly. Wood smoke, mothballs, and something else, something rotten. The shadows kept swirling, darker and longer than before. I could hear whispers, the memories of those who'd been lost echoing in the corners. But this time I wasn't alone. I turned to see the woman standing in the doorway, her eyes pleading. "You can't let it in." I took a hesitant step toward her. "What do I do?" Before she could answer, the shadows swept forward, engulfing her, dragging her back into the darkness. "No!" I screamed. That's when I saw it, a glint of silver in the corner of the room. A knife sat on the counter, abandoned and stained. My heart raced again, but this time it was fueled by determination. I dashed toward it, knowing that something had to give. I could feel the shadow trying to seep through the cracks, hungry for both of us. As I grasped the knife, I took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation that was coming. I wasn't just here for me anymore. I was going to fight for her, too. But would it be enough? I stood frozen, the cold metal of the knife biting into my palm. The whispers in the corners of the cabin grew louder, a cacophony of voices vying for my attention. Panic surged within me. What did they want? I forced myself to focus. The woman was gone, but her urgency echoed in my mind. I had to protect the cabin. I had to confront whatever this shadow was. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the walls, snapping me back to reality. The door rattled violently as something pounded against it. I pressed my back against the wood, trying to fortify my defense. "No!" I shouted, gripping the knife tighter. "You can't come in!" The shadows thickened, merging into the shape I had seen earlier. It loomed before me, its grotesque visage shifting and swirling. I could feel its anger as it clawed at the door. The whispers coiled around me, warning and taunting, a reminder of all that was trapped within these walls. Then I heard a soft voice break through the chaos. "You can't control it." My heart sank. Who said that? I looked around the dim interior. Was it just a figment of my imagination? "Let it take you," the voice persisted, filled with a cruel comfort. "You'll be free." "Free?" I spat. "From what?" The shadow began to pull back, swirling like a storm preparing to unleash its wrath. In that moment, it felt as if time slowed. I could grasp the edge of my fear, but I felt the weight of my memory dragging me down. The cabin wasn't just a place, it was a trap, holding everything I wished to forget. I moved toward the window, the knife clasped tight in my hand. The world outside was shrouded in darkness, the trees bending beneath the weight of the shadow. I could see it moving like a predator, pacing back and forth. "Show us what you've done," the voice pressed. "Show us who you are." I hesitated for a moment. I had opened the door before. What if it demanded more? What if stepping through that threshold wasn't the only way to confront it? I inhaled deeply, focused on the knife. "If you want to know, then here I am," I shouted, my voice ringing out. "Take me if you can." The room shook. A gust of cold air whipped through, making the lights flicker. I shut my eyes tight, waiting for the overwhelming force to consume me, and then in a flash I saw it. A flicker of light in the darkness outside, a figure standing in front of the cabin. I blinked, confusion crashing over me. Who was that? "Help!" I screamed, but deep down I knew I couldn't trust a stranger. The cabin pulsed around me, shadows multiplying, edges bending. I felt the weight of the knife simply fade away, as if it had never existed. And that's when I realized the whispers were chanting something, a single word that broke free from the chaos. "Remember." A jolt shot through me, illuminating flashes of forgotten moments. The times I ran away, the faces of those I lost, the night I opened the door. Before I could process it all, the pounding returned, stronger this time. Whatever was outside was relentless. I had to make a choice. I opened my eyes to face the shadow, my heart pounding, not just with fear, but with a burgeoning determination. "In the end, you won't have me." That's when the shadows lunged once more, twisting in a chaotic frenzy. The shadows crashed against me like a wave, cold and suffocating. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall behind me, the force jarring my senses. Panic clawed at my throat. I was trapped between the darkness inside and the unknown outside. "Stop! I won't let you take me," I yelled, though a small part of me wondered what "you" even meant anymore. The shape morphed, too chaotic to define, an angry consciousness that saw me as prey. Then I saw it again. The figure outside the cabin was still there, a faint glow illuminating dimly through the window. They were watching, waiting. My first instinct was to scream again, but this time I hesitated. What if it was a trap? What if stepping into the light was the very thing that would doom me? The whispers escalated, rising to a crescendo that threatened to tear my sanity apart. "Remember, remember!" they echoed, each repetition louder, more insistent. My heart raced. I didn't just have to face the shadow, I had to confront my own past. I turned away momentarily, forcing myself to focus. The figure was moving now, stepping cautiously toward the cabin. I had only seconds to decide who else might be caught in this nightmare. "Get inside!" I shouted at them, unsure if they could even hear me. "You need to come in." Then the door shattered open with a deafening crash, and the shadow surged forward, eager to consume everything in its path. I braced myself, the metal of the knife no longer a comfort. And that's when I noticed something strange on the floor, a scrap of paper fluttering in the wind. I bent down instinctively, my focus shifted. On it was a drawing, a crude sketch of a cabin, but it looked just like mine. There were markings all around it, almost like a map. "Look!" I shouted, awestruck. "It's a—" But the moment was cut short. The shadow lunged again, almost feeding off my distraction. I jerked back and looked back toward the window, realizing the figure was at the door now, peeking in. "Who are you?" I cried out. "You're not safe here." In response, the figure raised a hand, a gesture that felt oddly familiar. "We can stop it together," they called, their voice filled with determination. I felt a shiver down my spine. How did they know about the shadow? What had drawn them here? Before I could ask, the shadow snaked closer, tendrils reaching for the figure. I could see fear flash across their face, but alongside it was something else, an unyielding courage. "Stay back!" I shouted. I grabbed the paper, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "Trust me," they called. "You have to remember what you did." Then it was clear. The darkness wasn't just threatening me, it wanted my past. What had I done to make it so angry? The shadow collided with me again, but this time I was not alone. I felt the energy of the figure ignite something inside me. That's when I realized, as I clutched the paper, that I held the key. And whatever lay behind that door, I couldn't just shut it out anymore. Suddenly I heard a new sound, rising from the depths of the shadows. A low growl, filled with an ancient rage, and it chilled me to the bone. "Get back!" I screamed as the shadow surged forward once more, this time with an intensity that felt like it would break through everything I knew. And before I could react, I saw the look in the figure's eyes, a combination of desperation and hope. Then came the roar, echoing the primal nature of fear. Everything inside my world shifted. What lay outside was no longer just a threat. It was a revelation. The shadow surged, and in that moment, everything seemed to freeze. I felt its dark energy rushing past me, but I couldn't afford to lose focus. The figure outside had stepped inside the cabin, their eyes wide with determination. "Help me," I pleaded, grabbing their arm as the shadows roamed like a living being around us. "What do we do?" "Give me the drawing," they shouted, their voice cutting through the chaos. I hesitated, unsure of how a piece of paper could stop this force. But as I looked at the figure, something in their eyes sparked a desperate trust. I handed over the map. They held it up, looking at the markings, as if they were lifelines. "These must be the symbols of the barrier. We can use them. We just need to replicate them." "Replicate them how?" I asked, my voice trembling. With urgency, they knelt on the floor and pulled out a small knife from their pocket. "We carved the symbols into the ground. It's our only chance." I didn't know if I believed in this, but the shadows were nearing. Fear coursed through me, but I felt a fight rising up alongside it. I knelt beside the figure, glancing at the paper again. "Which one first?" I asked, tracing the markings nervously. "Start with this one," they replied, pointing at a zigzag shape. Together we scratched the ground, desperately trying to mimic the patterns as the shadows clawed for our skin. As we worked, I could hear whispers rising with increasing volume. "You can't escape! You can't escape! Focus!" my companion urged. I gritted my teeth, forcing the noise out of my mind. Just as we finished one of the symbols, the shadows recoiled slightly, like they were hit by a wave. "See? It's working!" the figure exclaimed, hope brightening their voice. I felt a surge of energy. Maybe this wasn't pointless after all, but just then I glanced at the window again. Outside, the dark figure was still there, waiting, but now it didn't seem just like a shadow. It looked human. My heart sank. "What are you?" I whispered, trying to make sense of what I saw. The figure's face flickered in and out of visibility, caught between two worlds. "Keep going," my ally said, pulling me back into the moment. I tore my eyes away and gripped the knife tighter. We moved to the next symbol, carving hastily as the growls grew louder around us. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the cabin itself was turning into a cage. "What if it isn't enough?" I gasped. "What if we can't stop it?" "Then we'll find another way," they said, their determination unwavering. I admired their resolve, but was still caught in my fear. Just when we finished the second mark, a powerful blast rocked through the cabin, shaking the floor. "Hurry!" the figure shouted, and that's when I noticed something glowing under the last marking. A soft light pulsed, illuminating the dirt. "What is this?" I breathed, feeling both dread and curiosity. "What?" they yelled, glancing at the floor before returning their focus to the task. But I couldn't pull my eyes away. The growl sharpened into a roar that echoed around us, drowning out everything else. Suddenly the light surged, responding to the shadows as they writhed with fury. What did I just discover? I thought, panic setting in again. Then I realized whatever it was, I had to face it, not just the shadow, but the truth of what was waiting for me to uncover. "No matter what," I whispered to myself and the figure, "we can't stop now." The light grew more intense, casting eerie shadows across the cabin walls. I felt a strange heat radiate from the glowing symbol, and it sent a wave of energy through me. It was almost as if the earth itself was reacting to the presence of the shadow. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper now. "Keep carving," my companion urged, but I couldn't break my gaze away from that glow. It was mesmerizing, like it was calling to me, promising answers, or maybe something worse. The growl outside morphed into frantic knocking. The dark figure was no longer just waiting. It was trying to get in. I could see its shadow stretching across the floor and creeping closer to us. "Don't look at it," my ally shouted. "Focus on the symbols." I forced my attention back to the task. We had one more symbol to carve, and time was running out. I stabbed the knife into the dirt, desperation fueling my movements. "What if this doesn't work?" "It will work. Just trust me." They sounded confident, but their eyes betrayed a hint of fear. As we finished the last mark, the light pulsed violently again, swallowing the darkness with its brilliance. The shadows shrieked, and for the first time, I felt like we were gaining ground. A barrier was forming, a protective wall against whatever threat lurked beyond. But just when I thought we might have a fighting chance, the light flickered. The shadows reacted instantly, writhing like a living organism as they fought to break through. I glanced at my companion. "What's happening?" "They're pushing back. We have to concentrate." With a surge of adrenaline, I pressed forward, drawing the final lines of the last symbol. The energy rushed through me, urging me to connect with whatever was trapped in that light. In an instant, I understood. "It's a portal!" I exclaimed. "It could lead to something else." "What? We can't—" Before they could finish, the dark figure crashed into the cabin, shattering the door. Shadows exploded into the room, swirling like a storm. The palpable fear clung to the air, and the noise was deafening. I fought the instinct to run, knowing I had to stand my ground. From the chaos, a face emerged, clear and human, yet twisted with rage. It was like looking into a distorted mirror, reflecting dark desires. "You have unleashed what should have remained closed," it howled, its voice echoing with power. I shivered, but held my breath. "You're not going to take us." "Foolish child," it sneered, surveying our faded efforts. "You think you are ready for what lies beyond." Then something shifted in the air, an answer hiding just out of reach. My heart raced. What did I just let in? I thought, feeling the weight of the impending confrontation. The figure charged towards me, shadows coiling like serpents, and I braced myself. Suddenly the ground beneath us began to quake as the glowing symbol flickered again. It was now or never. Would this portal save us or consume everything we knew? In a moment of clarity I shouted, "Now! We have to link with the light!" Just as darkness closed in, I launched forward, desperate to grasp the glowing energy, hoping it would lead us to safety, or perhaps to the truth of our own destinies. The moment my fingers touched the glowing energy, a shockwave surged through me. The light enveloped my body, pulling me in like a magnet. I felt my allies' presence next to me, their grip tightening as they joined me in this strange connection. The shadow figure halted, a mix of confusion and rage warping its features. "No, you cannot step into that light," it screamed, but its voice was drowned out by a roar of energy. Suddenly, images flashed before my eyes, memories that weren't mine, whispers of long-forgotten places and glimpses of dark entities. I struggled against the tide of information, but there was something familiar about the visions. It was as if I was recalling secrets from a past I had never lived. "Focus!" my ally shouted, snapping me back to the present. "Don't get lost in it." I could see the shadows recoiling, battling against the light. The symbol we carved became a gateway, a path leading away from the chaos. I suddenly realized it wasn't just a portal, it was a lifeline. "What do we do?" I yelled over the cacophony. "We have to choose." They were still holding tightly to the energy, face set in determination. "We can go through or fight, and I can't hold this for long." The shadow figure grew frantic, lunging forward, desperate to tear us apart. I could feel its malice. Fear threatened to drown me, but I pushed it down. This was our chance. "Let's jump!" I shouted, pulling them closer as the light pulsed again, urging us forward. But just as we were about to vault into the unknown, a hand shot out from the darkness, grabbing my ankle. I stumbled, falling backward, but my companion held on. "No!" they cried, their eyes wide with panic. The shadows started to swarm around us, trying to pull me deeper into their grasp. "Keep the light going!" I yelled. "Don't let it falter!" I jerked my foot free, desperation lending me strength. As I regained my footing, I felt the symbol's glow intensify, reacting to our fear and determination. In that moment, the dark figure's grip loosened, and I propelled myself into the light, my heart pounding. We fell into the portal, tearing through the fabric of reality. The world around me shifted, colors blending into an overwhelming haze before settling into a new form. With a crash, we landed on solid ground again, the glow surrounding us morphing into a vibrant landscape. The air was thick with possibility, yet shadows lingered at the edges, hungry and relentless. I turned to my ally, breathless. "Where are we?" They scanned our surroundings, an uneasy look on their face. I think we're still in danger." Then, from behind us, that distorted voice rang out again, but it was no longer distant. "You think you've escaped? The shadows will always find you." I shivered. The portal hadn't just taken us away, it had thrown us into something deeper, something that connected us to a world soaked in darkness. "That wasn't the end," I whispered, dread curling in my stomach. Then everything went dark. I felt the air shift, a palpable tension snaking around us in thick waves. The vibrant landscape around us dimmed, the colors faded into muted grays. Shadows danced on the periphery, and I sensed a heavy presence lurking just beyond our sight. We had escaped the cabin, but the fight was far from over. "Stay close," I whispered urgently to my companion as we huddled together, scanning our surroundings. Anxiety knotted in my chest. "What do we do now?" "Focus on the symbols," they urged, determination etched on their face. "Remember the markings we carved. You felt how they pushed back against the shadow. If we can find a way to replicate them here." "But where?" I glanced around, nerves jittering beneath my skin. "This place feels entirely different. It's suffocating." "We need to keep moving," my ally insisted, pushing ahead. "Maybe we can find a way to turn this against it." With each step, I could feel the darkness closing in, whispering in my ears, cracking at the edges of my sanity. Memories of the cabin flooded back, the tapping, the fear, the looming shadow that hunted me. Had I really escaped it, or had it followed us here? As we ventured forward, we stumbled upon a clearing. Its center was marked by a series of stones, each etched with distressing symbols. They mirrored the ones we'd carved back at the cabin, but here they whispered warnings instead of hope. "Look at these," I breathed, kneeling to inspect the markings. "They're more complex, almost like a trap." "There's power here," my companion replied, tracing their fingers over the inscriptions thoughtfully. "If we can harness it, we might—" Suddenly the shadows coiled tighter, the air thick with a palpable dread. The distorted voice rang out again, this time clearer, more menacing. "You're trapped in your hopes, fools. You'll never be more than what you once were." I felt a chill ripple down my spine as the shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness rushing to engulf us. Instinct kicked in, and I yanked my ally toward the protective stone circle. "Get in! Quick!" We scrambled to the oddly shaped stones, crouching low. The growling intensified, the shadows pressing against the perimeter as if hungry for our essence. "Just like in the cabin," I thought frantically. "It needs to be marked." I glanced around the clearing, desperate for something to defend ourselves. Then it hit me, the scattered brush and twigs surrounding us. "Grab that!" I shouted, pointing to an armful of sharp sticks and stones. "We can create a barrier." Together, we hastily began arranging them along the edges of the circle, replicating the symbols we'd once carved. The growl morphed into a roar, the dark figure pulsing just outside the remnants of our makeshift fortification. It loomed closer. "You think you can outsmart me? I am your past, your fears. You can't outrun yourself." But I pushed the dread aside, driven by urgency. "Just keep working," I urged my ally, feeling the shadows clawing at the edges of our refuge. Just as we finished the last marking, the concentrated energy pulsed through the stones, illuminating the darkness. The air vibrated, resonating with our sacrifice, our fear, and our determination. A blinding light erupted from the stones, forcing the shadows back. I could feel the darkness recoiling, battling against the light with primal fury. "It's working," I gasped, clenching my fist as energy flooded through me. But the voice grew more frantic, swirling with malice. "You can't escape the truth. You must come to terms with who you are." I hesitated, moments of vulnerability flashing through my mind, the regrets, the mistakes, the shadows of past decisions clawing at my consciousness. But then I heard my companion's voice, grounded and resolute. "Remember why we fought back. Remember why it chased you. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone it seeks to take." What was it that haunted me? What had I done to bring this darkness into my life? The figure writhed just outside the stones, torn between desperation and rage. Somewhere in that darkness was a reflection of me, a darker version that I had run from for too long. "Face it!" I shouted, voice stealing with newfound strength. "We're not afraid anymore!" In that moment I challenged the shadows, daring it to pull me back into the nightmare. The light expanded, wrapping around us like a cocoon, filling the clearing with radiance. But as it brightened, I caught sight of the figure's face, distorted and overlapping with my own reflection. "This is your choice," it screamed, seemingly omnipotent, its voice echoing in my head. "Leave now and abandon your shadows, or embrace them." I pressed my palms against the stone barrier, taking a deep breath as I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of my past pushing against me, but now it was a call for understanding rather than fear. "If I'm meant to face you, then so be it," I breathed, opening my eyes. "You don't define me anymore." With that declaration I pushed past the boundary of light, reaching into the depths of the oncoming darkness, the shadows swirling around me like a tempest. Each strand felt like a memory, piercing me with the weight of unresolved pain. I felt the connection surge, but instead of fear, I drew strength from the fragments of everything I had been. This was a choice to attack my past with truth. The light erupted, clashing against the darkness in a magnificent explosion, carving a path. Then, silence. The world fell away. I blinked, disoriented, the shadows dissipating into wisps of despair. I opened my eyes, gasping as I sat back down, the ground solid beneath me. We were back at the cabin, the shadows retreating into the trees. I turned to see my companion breathing heavily beside me, both of us soaking in the surreal sight. "We did it," they whispered, awe skimming their voice. But I nodded slowly, still piecing the experience together. My heart pulsed against my chest as I glanced out into the woods. The forest was still and yet held an echo of uncertainty. "Something remains," I murmured, shivers dancing along my spine. "I don't know if it's really gone." We stood together, not just as allies, but as weary souls who had come to understand the blurred lines between fear and acceptance. But I also realized the fear would never fully leave. It would always linger, a reminder that sometimes our pasts don't go quietly. They lurk, waiting to challenge us again, ensuring we never quite forget. But for now, we were alive. We survived, though the questions would haunt me. Had I truly fought it off, or was it just lying in wait, preparing for the next chance to slip back into the shadows? And I knew someday that reckoning would come again. And maybe that was the scariest part of all.